Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of our webinar series. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Zehra Allahverdi. She will be presenting her talk titled From Motives to Addiction, a Uses and Gratifications Perspective on Social Media Use. Professor, thank you very much for joining us and for kindly accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
I now leave the floor to you.
Okay. So hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about social media, which is commonly used by all of us. So for motives to addiction, a uses and gratifications perspective on social media use. Now I'm going to be covering this a little backwards, meaning first I'm going to be talking about addiction just in general to describe it because we already have general knowledge. I'm assuming it's discussed a lot within the community, but move on from there to motives, like what's our actual reason for using it, what's our motivation for using it. But to know that, it's kind of great to start with the definition of addiction to begin with. Now, there are lots of views related to addiction and whether what's considered addiction can change from person to person. But before we talk about addiction and our reasons for using it, we kind of have to define what social media is. We use this term quite easily, but what we actually mean when we say social media is important. If we're going to define it, we can say that it's internet-based. So it's an internet-based platform, a site or an application. That's an important component of that. Here, online, what you get to do is you create or share content, you participate in social networking, and you interact and you communicate with other people. So the core function of this is a lot of people get to connect with a lot of people. So it's a many-to-many communication, and it involves either public or semi-public identity representation. That's really what differentiates it. And if we take this definition, so if we say that it's about creating and sharing content, participation, social networking, interacting and communicating, then we have to come up with, okay, so is WhatsApp social media or not? In WhatsApp, what we get to see is, yes, you do communicate with other people. It is an online application, so there is that option there. But it lacks some of the core features of what we consider social media, meaning you don't really have public content that you get to discover online and look at other people's profiles. It's not a broad networking. It's more mainly focused on one-on-one interactions. And you don't really go viral on WhatsApp. So the purpose for using WhatsApp is a little different. It's a social tool. Yes, it's a social tool, but it's not a social media platform. So when we define social media, we have to be very clear with our definition so that if we're studying it, our studies are conducted properly and includes the proper platforms or tools. Now, there can be disagreements. I'm talking about the general agreement within the field. And we also get to think of other options, such as, for instance, Tinder, right? It's a dating application. It's one of the basic dating applications out there, most commonly used ones. Is a dating application social media or not? That's another question we get to come up with. So if we look at it more specifically, yes, you do create a profile on Tinder, for instance. You do get to network with other and interact with other individuals, right? And you can create a feed of your own with your bio and your photograph and your information. So it is public display of yourself in some form, right? And you can have some broader social networking too, depending on what dating app you're using. So apparently like Bumble actually does that and has that feature. But here what really differentiates is what's the purpose of these applications? Because the purpose is you meet someone online, your goal is to meet them offline. It's not to interact with them online. It's not to stay with them online. You eventually move off of the platform. The platform has the purpose of connecting you with someone so that you can meet them face to face, right? So the goal for these dating apps is a little different compared to other platforms that we could use. And there is no general fee. So you can't just go through and passively consume the content on there. So there's that difference as well. So the main thing that you get to see is trying to find a mutual match and then move online into more of a closed space outside of that platform. So if we are going to sum all of this together, we're going to say, okay, so what we're going to be considering today for social media is whether you get to share or create content, whether you're participating in this large social network, and your goal is to interact and communicate through comments and likes and shares and reactions. That's really what we're talking about. So if we move on and we think, okay, well, now that we've defined social media, how about we look at the definition of and the view of whether it's an addiction or not? Now, Griffiths, in his 2005 article, and he has lots of articles on this, he talks about the 6 components of a behavioral addiction, which I talk about often. Now, for there to be a behavioral addiction, you need to have certain components. And one of these is preoccupation, right? So what is your thoughts throughout the day? Do you constantly want to go back and look at Instagram or Facebook or whatever Snapchat platform that you're using, right? Let's just go with Instagram. If I'm thinking about Instagram throughout the day, I want to open up my Instagram account. I want to look at my Instagram account and I keep going back to that idea. It means I'm preoccupied with the thought of using it. Now that's an alarm. The second one is tolerance. I do this more and more often. I go on Instagram for longer and longer periods of time. So the tolerance here is increasing, right? We then have withdrawal, meaning if I stay away from Instagram, let's say, I'm going to start to have withdrawal symptoms. And usually this is things like I feel more depressed, I feel bored, I don't know what to do. And then I get preoccupied again. I keep thinking about going back online. And we can see this experience can increase more often when we're stressed compared to when we're more relaxed. But it can happen all throughout, really. And then we have relapse. So your goal is to stop, for instance, and you're like, I'm going to go on social media detox. And you do for a while, and then you find yourself back in square one. You're back to using social media, maybe excessively, and your tolerance is increasing as well. And then you get to have conflict because of that. So you get to have both interpersonal and intrapersonal, meaning you get to have arguments with people around you and then also within yourself because you're dissatisfied with yourself. So the example that I like to give here is with my older son, I went to his school one day and the psychologist was working with the families. And a lot of the families had a very similar complaint. The mothers were mainly talking about how their husbands were coming home and just getting on their phone and fixating on the social media and disregarding the rest of the family and not really communicating, pretending to listen really while not listening. And this was really impacting a lot of families on that day that we were sitting together. And so what happened was their use of social media led to interpersonal conflict. It led to arguments between the husband and the wife, which trickles down to the child as well. It also leads you to view yourself negatively and think, well, I'm not really reaching my potential. I'm not really where I want to be. I'm wasting my time. And just having your identity moves farther and farther away from where you want to be. So your goal of where you want to be compared to where you currently are, the distance increases. And the more the distance increases, the more likely that you are going to be feeling depression. And then the last one is you're going to use it for mood modification. So it's like, well, I'm bored. How about I look at social media? I'm too tired to do anything. How about I look at social media? I'm really happy and excited today. How about I look at social media? So you use social media to modify or to change your specific mood or to help you in some form. But it turns into a behavior feedback loop and it turns into a negative impact because then you can't get out of the cycle, right? And there are a lot of research that look at social media as a behavioral addiction and talk about how we can move away from this addiction, which is all great. But what we can also do is think, why though? Why am I using the social media? Like, what's the purpose behind my use of social media, right? So instead of asking, what do media do to the people? How does it really impact their brain? And how does it impact their functioning? How does it impact their relationships? I want to ask, what do people do with the media? So switch that question around. Because with uses and gratifications theory, it's making you an active participant, saying you get to choose what you want, right? You have a specific goal and you're motivated with that goal and you direct yourself to a certain path, right? So it makes the claim that it's an interactive, it's user-driven, and it's multifaceted, and it categorizes you into specific groups. So here I'm going to stop a little bit and talk about motivation quickly, just a few sentences. So since we're saying, well, why are we using the social media platforms and applications? We got to also stop and ask ourselves, well, there must be a motivation behind it. So if there's a motivation behind it, what's motivation, right? Motivation is to get into action or to change your course of action. So it's to get moving or to change your direction of movement. And the motivation consists of both push factors and pull factors. Push factors can be biological or psychological. So if I am hungry, it pushes me to eat. That's a biological thing. If I feel like my basic psychological need of belonging is not met, it pushes me to act a certain way. Those are push. It can be biological and psychological aspects, factors that push us. At the same time, we get pulled by incentives and by goals. So my goal of being, I don't know, a psychologist, a doctor, or whatever, is going to pull me towards a certain direction. So drives push us, goals and intensive pull us. And when we look at use of social media, we get to see both the push aspects and the pull. There's a combination of both of these things. So you have to focus on, okay, what is it that's motivating me? What's driving me into this kind of behavior? And so this theory, it developed in the 1970s, and it was used initially to understand traditional mass media, TV and radio. That's really where it started. But later on, they wanted to ask, okay, well, how about we bring this to social media as well? While they were doing this theory, they came up with 5 core needs that they believe that media fulfills. They think that media fulfills our cognitive needs, our affective needs, our personal integrative needs, our social integrative needs, and our tension release. So they've described it as well. Like here I have it, for instance, for cognitive, it's to acquire information and knowledge. For affective, it's to have emotional pleasure or experience. For personal integrative, it's to have credibility, status, and self-esteem, connecting with family and friends, and escaping reality and relaxing. So these are the main 5 core needs they came up with. And now I'm going to be talking a little bit about, well, if we bring this to social media, what kind of motives, what kind of motivations can we find, and what can we see in the literature? So the main ones that we saw fell into 5 categories. I was looking at these with one of my students, and the first is the focus on the self and crafting identity and gaining recognition. So why am I using social media? Yes, I'm using it maybe excessively. Yes, maybe it's turning into a behavioral addiction, but why am I using it? It could be because of self-presentation and status. I want to present myself. It's a way for me to create my identity or enhance it in some way, or my social status. So I gain recognition through this and craft any identity that I want, that I feel suits me. So it's more of a curated, positive image of myself. And it can be, either just presenting myself to the world. It could be because I want fame. So if I want fame, I want to be well known. I want to be popular. I want to be internet famous. All these things could be fame seeking, right? I could do it for social recognition, to be validated, to be respected. I could just create and solidify my own identity, which is why when we're looking at social media used by adults and social media used by the younger generation and adolescents, the impact is different, because what's the purpose? Why are they using it? And the identity creation is generally seen among adolescents. We get to see that adolescents mostly focus on using social media for self-presentation and creation of their identity. or they could use it for disclosure and self-expression. So I'm just sharing my thoughts and my feelings. But all of that goes into the self, crafting the self and gaining recognition. And we can think about a lot of people who use, Instagram or social media of any kind for fame seeking, right? Or we could think of many that use it to create a different online identity that doesn't really fit in with who they are in real life. And maybe that's what they're doing to feel better about themselves. The second one is social connection and relationships. So here, we're doing it because of the need to belonging. So the need of belonging is a basic psychological needs within the self-determination theory, and it's considered a push motivation, not a pull motivation. It's a push motivation. So if I'm lacking in some way in my basic needs, psychological needs, I will try to fulfill them through different means. Meaning, if my need for belonging and connection is not met in the real world, it could push me online and lead to me becoming more involved with social media. So in general, it's the interaction, the commitment, the relationship that you have with other people. Now, you can have general social interaction. You can also use it socially to maintain relationships. So let's say you went to study abroad and you made a lot of friends, right? And then you come back to your home country. You want to be connected to those individuals. So you could use different social media platforms for that. When Facebook first came out, that was one of the main things that people did. They all went online. They were excited. They tried to find like high school friends and reconnect with loved ones. So it was a great opportunity to maintain their current existing relationships. And you can also build new relationships, right? So you can meet new people. You can be a part of a virtual community. Let's say that I am like really interested in decluttering these days. I could go and be a part of different groups online on Facebook, for instance, related to decluttering and share things related to decluttering. So it would give me an opportunity to meet new people who have and enjoy the same hobbies that I do. And while gaining this social connection, I could also try to be getting affection. So just attention from other people. I want, for instance, I share my personal life and I want comforting comments. I want people to provide supporting messages to me because I need to feel connected. If I feel like, for instance, I'm all alone experiencing an autoimmune disease, sharing this content online will fulfill my social connection when everyone comments on it and makes me feel better about myself as well. And you can also find this companionship, and you get to see this a lot when you watch some YouTubers and they're like, well, I was feeling so lonely today, and now that I have my camera on and I'm talking to you guys, I feel much better. It's a way for them to feel like they belong to a community, whether it's in person or if it's virtual. So, like I said, the first one was self-presentation and how you create an identity, how you create fame seeking. And the second one is mostly focused on how do I connect with new people? How do I maintain my existing relationships? How can I interact with these people online? What can I do to interact with these people and get affection from these people? And in one study that we're working on with my students that we're coming close to sending off for publication, hopefully, is we're looking at uncertainty. So the reason why I'm going to talk about this a little bit is because you get to see, yes, there is a specific focus on a reason for using social media, but that's also connected with other factors as well. So for instance, in our study, we noticed that if you have intolerance to uncertainty, if you cannot deal with uncertainty, you're more likely to use doom scrolling, to participate in doom scrolling. And if you participate in doom scrolling, you're more likely to seek online connection. So number two, the social connection, you're more likely to virtually communicate and connect with each other. Normally, uncertainty does not, in our model, does not lead to connecting online. But once you start doom scrolling, then you feel the need to connect online. And we get to see that with uncertainty, even if you don't participate in doom scrolling, it still directly relates to using more social media, which is interesting. Maybe because of what purpose. You kind of look into that, and we can give some examples of that later. But the third one is cognitive and information needs. So these motives are driven by the desire to learn something, right? Because you want to learn something new, you want to understand a situation, you want to stay informed about a topic, whatever it is related to cognition. So if I actively search for news and knowledge or educational content, right, that's going to be more of the cognitive side. So if there's uncertainty, it's more likely that I'm going to participate in doom scrolling, which is what we found, because I'm looking for information, that negative information, and that leads to me using social media more. So that's where all of that starts. Yes, I need information, but why do I need information? So here we're just stopping at one corner. We're like, okay, so it could be that you're looking for information, but why? That even goes further than that. And we're not going to go into that today, but in that one study, uncertainty was kind of leading to that behavior. So you can use it for not just cognitive information as in like the news or educational content. You could also use it for surveillance, that kind of information. Like if you broke up with somebody, you might be wondering what the other person's doing. So you could just snoop online. If you're a parent, you're more likely to surveil because you're looking at what your child's doing online to see if they're safe. So it is often used as a relationship surveillance. And it doesn't really involve interacting with them. It's just surveilling them. It doesn't have to be just people you know or past relationships. People do it to celebrities or influencers. They just peek. They just peek and surveil what they're doing. That's still considered surveillance. So when we say cognitive and information, it could be educational, it could be news, it could be me surveilling information from other people. It could also be norms and trend following. So I could try to follow trends, popular trends, cultural norms, what's in, what's cool right now. I get to find that out through social media, right? So what's the color of the year? What's the, I don't know, what kind of fashion is popular this year? What kind of skirts are worn this year? Most of this is shared online through these platforms. And then the documentation and is also information. Like you could be giving information as well. For instance, the digital diary, you're sharing yourself. It's an archive or a record of yourself. And so, like, for instance, one of the videos that I was analyzing, and it was by the Red Pill community, and it was called Monk Mode. There, people actually commented day 1, day 2, day 3, and they're like literally just writing down the diary of how they're living and whether it actually is possible to live in a monk mode. And so it's this digital diary that other people also get to interact with and say, well, this is what worked for me, this is what happened, and maybe this is what technique that you could try, and they give advice to each other. But why? See, the thing is, we also have to ask ourselves why. Why do I need to know what other celebrities are doing? Why do I need to know what other people are up to? And that connects with FOMO, which is a different concept, which again, we're not really covering today. I'm just focusing on the main topics here. But that's a whole other topic that could be examined, like why? One of the main questions that I would ask my students is, like, let's say you went to drink coffee with a friend. Because hopefully at the end of this, like you'll think purposely before using social media. You went to a coffee date with a friend and you're drinking coffee. You take a photo and you post it online. Why? I always ask, okay, it's nice, but why? Why did you post it online? Was it because you wanted to connect with other individuals? Do you feel like your belongingness, the need for belongingness is not met in real life? Do you feel like you need to say, I went to this specific cafe? Is that another purpose? Or is it to say, I'm wonderful at taking specific photographs? Or is it to say, I met this friend, guess what? This is really cool, and I want to share it with everyone. But you have to think about the purpose of why you're sharing something online, right? And we all have these unconscious reasons that sometimes we're not aware of until we actually stop and think about it. And even then, sometimes we may not realize. Number 4 is the hedonic and escapist needs. So this is to enjoy. Hedonic means pleasure. to experience pleasure. Now, pleasure, I was just talking about this with my class today. Pleasure in the past was viewed differently than pleasure today, right? So we even have it within the American Constitution. And the pursuit of happiness is in the Constitution because you want to believe that you're living for something that makes you happy or pleasurable. But pleasurable in the past meant doing something for the community, doing something for your environment. It didn't mean me, which is what it means today. So we're using the same term. We're maybe reading some of the past same literature, but we mean very different things. In today's world, hedonic means what's fun for me and just me, not the community, not my environment, not about how productive or wise I am, but just me as an individual. And so with this perspective, with this new perspective, I'm going to be seeking pleasure. And I'm going to do it to relax and to distract myself from reality, right? So I'm going to do it to be having fun and experiencing amusement, to avoid boredom, to escape from stress or difficulties or real life problems. It's mostly, if we honestly really look at it, it's to kill time. We try to kill time because we cannot face living life and experience a bit of boredom. We want to completely fill ourselves with things to do in that moment of relaxation. We can say that we are de-stressing, that we're calming down, and that may be one of our goals, but it honestly does not lead to de-stressing. It does not lead to calming down, which is why now there's a trend in living slowly, like slow pace, instead of doing everything and really fast or becoming involved in so many platforms or meeting a lot of people. People are even starting to declutter other individuals in their lives so that they can have a more simplistic lifestyle, right? And then the last one is novelty and inspiration. So you could actually use it for what? Because you want stimulation, creativity, because of you want to experience something new. So for instance, I was always interested in crocheting, but I never had the guts to try it out. And then one day I turned on a YouTube video. I was like, okay, let me just watch this video. And then I started crocheting a blanket. So it was for novelty. I wanted to learn something and be inspired. And whenever I'd ask people around, like, could you show me how you crochet? They would do it super fast and it would look very difficult. But with YouTube, I could constantly pause it and learn how to do something. So you can use it productively for creative ideas and motivation, right? A way of expressing yourself artistically. And it's possible to do that. But all of us, if we look at ourselves, we're going to fall into one of these categories way more than other ones. But it doesn't mean that, let's say that I'm using it mostly for novelty inspiration and maybe also for cognitive information needs. So it doesn't have to be one and that's it. It could be a combination of things. But one of them is usually more dominant of a reason for your use, right? So that's called the motive profile. So a single use rarely has just one single user, rarely has just one motive. They have a combination of several motives that drives their overall use. There's a lot of different reasons why you use it, and you actually have to think about, okay, what is the specific reason that I'm using it? And it's good to kind of sit down with yourself and try to figure that out, because otherwise we're really not going to be thinking about it. And so yes, there are different motives that we have, and we all differ from each other. And also, we also have different motives based on different platforms, meaning most of the times people use Facebook, apparently, according to research, people use Facebook for entertainment, escaping reality, relationship maintenance, social interaction, and affection seeking. That's what they found. Especially like relationship maintenance, like you can keep adding people that you know into Facebook just to talk with them once in a while. Instagram, interestingly, is used for surveillance a lot. So you can follow a lot of people that you know, or celebrities of any kind that you're interested in, or documenting your life, or inspiration and self-promotion. People use it for self-promotion a lot. People don't use Facebook for self-promotion like they do for Instagram. With TikTok, it's for novelty, for social rewarding presentation, which makes sense. So you present yourself and you get socially rewarded for it. You also get to follow a lot of the trends on TikTok compared to other platforms. And again, escapism, entertainment. You can see there are some overlaps, like escapism, entertainment is both on Facebook and TikTok. And these are the main ones. So they can, like, the other motives can also exist in these platforms, but I'm giving you the main ones for each platform. And then for Snapchat, you see information seeking and sharing, self-expression, entertainment, and social interaction. And then Twitter is positively associated with escapism. And I'm just curious because I would also think that it relates more to like looking for the news, so the cognitive and the information side, or maybe there's cultural differences. We could also look at different cultures and conduct studies there and see maybe one culture uses it for one purpose and then another. And usually there's a popular platform that a lot of people use. For instance, TikTok was not common in the past, but it's used a lot these days. So when after high school, for me, all my friends were on Facebook, and then they all kind of moved and trickled over to Instagram. And then they stopped using Instagram actively and they moved slowly onto Snapchat. So it does also change the trend of using which platform changes. But in general, after a while, you get to see that the motives that each platform satisfies is actually different from each other. And that's actually quite unique. So if you are a business and you know these studies, then you would create an Instagram for your business instead of a Facebook because it's used more often for self-promotion compared to other platforms. And we get to see differences based on age and sex as well. Females use it more to relieve stress or take a break, and males use it for information seeking because they want to get information. Most often it can be news or some educational content as well, but there's a difference in our main purpose. So we might, like females might use it for information seeking as well, but the main one for them is generally stress relief and taking a break from things. You get to see that it also differs with age. So younger users generally use it to either build a new relationship, okay, escape from reality, or for entertainment. And older users, they do it for trendiness, for surveillance. Surveillance is a big one, documentation, and inspiration. What's inspiring them? So based on generations, you can see a difference in the use to fulfill those motives. And lastly, you get to see a difference based on personality as well. So we've talked about what social media is, right? How we can think about addiction. One way we can think about addiction, and then the reasons why we might be using social media. And we see that it differs based on age, based on sex, based on different number of factors, and among these is personality. So the big five is neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, conscientiousness, and agreeableness. But I also added narcissism because there is a lot of research on that as well. So you might also want to look into that research. So with high neuroticism, you get to see that most of the time, because neuroticism means high emotional instability. So if you have high neuroticism, you're not emotionally stable as a person. And if you're not emotionally stable as a person, it means that you are using these social media platforms to reward yourself and through self-presentation. It means you have lower self-esteem compared to other people, and you use these platforms for social validation and reassurance that you're okay. So in a way, it's a compensatory tool, right? So you want to see the likes, you want to see the comments, you want to see the approval that other people provide. It turns into this behavior feedback loop that constantly is ongoing. The personality that you have, the main personality trait that you have, is like a filter. It's a filter that influences why we actually go online. So it also impacts the motives for the use of social media. If you have high extroversion, let's say you're like extroverted, highly sociable, and energetic as a person and outgoing, you're going to think that being online is an extension of you. So your reason for using social media is to stay connected, is to be interactive with these individuals. See that it differs. Like if you're high on neuroticism, you'd use it for a different reason. And if you are high in extroversion, it would be much different reason than that. So if you're high to openness and experience, I just wrote openness, but openness to experience. And it means you have high creativity and curiosity, like you're interested to try new things. Then you would use social media for that. You would try to turn it into this creative canvas for you, where you look at trends and you look at things that you're interested in, right? So you're information seeking. If you're high in conscientiousness, which is high organization and self-discipline. Now, mind you, I said self-discipline. Because of that, it's really not used for trend following at all or building new relationships. It's more focused. Because they're disciplined, they prioritize deep connections with existing people instead of building new relationships. So their friend groups online might be smaller than other people because they have goals, long-term goals, and they want to reach those long-term goals. And therefore, they're focused on using social media based on those specific needs. If you have high agreeableness, so you want to be, if you have high compassion and cooperativeness because you're agreeable, it's going to be negatively linked with using it for self-promotion because you're humble. You're more likely to be humble. You're more likely to be involved in things online related to pro-social goals and group harmony and modesty, much more than other personality traits. And if you have narcissism, right? So if you have this grandiosity and this entitlement in general, like there can be different types of narcissism. I'm just talking about in general. It's positively linked to self-expression, to documentation, to trend following, for you sharing your whole life online, thinking that you're like a very important person and that you want people to respond to you, right? And in general, if I'm a person that focuses more on affection seeking, if I need affection from other people, then when I'm using my social media, I'm going to check it more often, but for less time. It's less time spent on it. Meaning, if I have, for instance, Instagram again as an example, if I put a story, that coffee story with my friend online, and I need affection quite a bit. So that's a push motivation because it's this need, psychological need that I have. What's going to happen is I'm going to pick up my phone constantly, like, how many people looked at my story? Oh, 100 people? Okay, I'm going to put it down. Oh, how many people looked at my story? Oh, 200 people? Put it down. So I'm not spending a lot of time holding my phone and looking at the media, but I'm frequently checking my media to see what's happening. That's because I need to have affection seeking, even if I'm not aware of it. But if you have escapism or more of trend following, then what happens is you don't pick it up your phone as much, but when you do, you stay on it longer. So you spend longer time on it. You spend like an hour on it or half an hour on it before you put it down. And interestingly, even the time of the day is important here. Like for instance, novelty is generally, the need for novelty is met usually at nighttime. People use it at nighttime to satisfy their need for novelty, maybe because, they work during the day, who knows? But there's also discussion of passive consumption and active consumption within the field. And there is a lot of research that says, passive consumption can be very detrimental to your mental health. But why do you use it for passive consumption? Mainly, people use it for passive consumption if they're using it for entertainment purposes. So they do it just like they're watching TV. Scroll down, just like watching TV. That's generally why they're using it passively. If they are contributing to the platform in any way, it's generally because they're trying to create an identity, which is what we talked about, one of the first ones, or they're seeking fame or they want social recognition. So their purpose there changes. And, this discussion can go on for hours. Like there's so many angles to it that it's very interesting research. But I think in general, if we kind of try to sum it all up today, I think that's how we can look at it. We can look at it from a personality, from age, from sex, from different things that we come into life with. For instance, the push and the pull can vary from person to person, and the degree that the need needs to be fulfilled can change. And based on that, we're all going to be using social media differently. So if I take data, if I pull up data and say, okay, this person's addicted to this degree, that's not enough. I have to dive deeper. And that was like the whole purpose of today. But I think that kind of sums up everything. So thank you guys. And there's a lot of my references are there. But that's the subject for the day. So do you guys have like any questions?
Thank you, Hocam. Was an excellent presentation. We can take questions now. You can share your questions in the chat or you may open your microphones. No questions, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it was very clear. So
Question, may I ask?
sure.
Yeah, maybe it was like a basic, but I want to ask it because a lot of people in my community make us a lot of time with the social media. So how can we at least decrease the time that they use? For example, let's say they notice that they use so much time, but so then what can we do about it?
Yeah, so first we have to notice based on like the Griffiths model, if we take that as a model, we can look at what are the factors or the components that are especially problematic for myself. Like let's say if I feel addicted. Once I define that, I have to dive into, okay, what is my motivation for using it, which is what we discussed today. Once I do that, let's say that my motivation generally is for my need to belong. I feel lonely and that's why I use it. Then I have to specifically plan activities to get out of the house, to communicate with other people, so that I can fulfill that need in real life because it's easier to try to fulfill it while laying on a couch or laying on the bed. And you also have to use different programs. So you can use like block apps, or you can use, there's a thing called a block, something like, I think it's actually called block. It's an actual physical object, which people find easier. So you take your phone and you touch it with the block, and then you put it far away in your car or wherever you want. And the whole time your phone turns into a simple phone. You can't use it in that manner. What I personally like to do is when I wake up, I have a block app. So I actually go in the moment I wake up and I block it for like 10 hours or 11 hours. And then I say you can use it for 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. It automatically blocks it. And some apps are really cool because even if you want to stop or pause it, like mine, because it doesn't let me pause it. It says you have to come back 10 minutes later, and it gives you time to really think about your goal. And then 10 minutes later you can pause it, but you have to write down, I don't care about myself or my future, and send it. So you feel terrible about yourself, which kind of blocks you from doing that. And once you start new habits and new strategies in your life, you use new strategies, you start moving away from using social media. But you definitely need assistance, I think, like using these block apps or whatever it is. It really, personally, it has helped me a lot. In fact, there's one app, even if you uh, uninstall the whole app, it says it's uninstalled, but for the next 9 hours, you still can't look at your social media. Good luck. Like it actually doesn't let you open it. So you're like, why bother? Like at some point, you got to get used to it. So if you figure out the proper app, you figure out what your specific motivations and goals are, you can start finding ways to fulfill those needs outside of social media, right? But you need a combination of both of those things. And of course, reinforce yourself when you do well, like baby
For
steps.
that perfect answer, but I want to add something that is coming in my mind right now. Like when I noticed that, they probably like talking something like that. This is for fun. I enjoyed the time that I'm scrolling, or like I couldn't do anything rather than this as that much as like funnier. So like how we can manage this, the fun thing or the enjoying thing.
It doesn't give you joy though. After a while, it does not give you joy anymore. It starts to become this routine that you get involved in, but it doesn't actually give you any joy. And so And you get to see this in a lot of different kinds of addictions. The main one that I usually like to give an example of is porn addiction, for instance. With porn addiction, people get really excited about porn when they're watching it, but then it doesn't give them excitement anymore. It's not exciting. Doesn't turn them on. They have to try something kinkier, something more different, something more unique every single time. And it comes back to motivation. Research has shown that if you don't do something in moderation, you don't get pleasure out of it. So you need to do it in moderation. And so even if you use social media excessively, after a while, people who are addicted to social media do tell you, I don't enjoy social media. I just can't stop myself. Then it's an addiction. So you have to learn to stop yourself, just like when you're smoking or any other type of addiction. And it's an addiction, so it's not easy. It's going to take time. And when you first turn everything off, you try to reset your brain, life will be boring initially. You will be tired, you will be bored, you won't know what to do with time. You just will try to find a way to kill your time. But then you will slowly start to find new habits. Like for me, then I started crocheting. Then I started reading a novel. Then I started playing table tennis with my kids. Like I actually started finding ways to fill up the day. Because if you wake up in the morning and you start planning your day and finding ways to fill it up, it's better. Otherwise, you just sit on the couch and like, wait, what am I going to do now? Because you're so used to your routine of sitting on the couch and looking at your phone after a certain hour.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Farida Zeynal'ı is raising finger.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your enlightening speech. That was very helpful. My question is a little bit actually out of the topic, but also related. Maybe I thought this addictive or heavy social media use, being there all the time, seeing people all the time, relating people all the time, might alter by our empathy level or perspective taking abilities, which might be kind of better side of the story that we can see. Is there any study like that you have seen so far, like social media use, but in addictive term, alters empathy levels of people, of children, for example?
So like alters the empathy in like a positive way or negative way?
In positive way, actually, seeing people all the time, relating to their experiences, their feelings, like being too empathetic, like unnecessarily too much.
But then we wouldn't really be talking about addiction, because once it's addiction, it's harmful. So if you use it in moderation and use it purposely, then it can be used in a way to increase one's empathy. Like for instance, with all the stuff that went on with Gaza, with the videos we got to see, we got to form empathy and understanding of the people in that community that we couldn't have if we hadn't seen those videos. So social media can be used to provide support to each other, like even with the Gaza situation, everyone across the world, people understood what was going on way more than they had in the past when it was just on TVs and it was through just one specific lens. But over consuming that is what it becomes very negative. So if you have your reason for using it is to have empathy, it's to create empathy, to get information, to understand, for educational content, then it can be positive when used in moderation. It's just like when we talk about screen time in kids, there's a lot of research that talks about how screen time is negative of an impact for kids, but it doesn't differentiate what content of the kids are consuming. So if it's just like Play-Dohs or weird eggs jumping out at each other, those random videos that kids watch, it's negative. But when kids actually watch programs such as Alpha Blocks or Number Blocks, educational content, kids that actually watch videos in moderation do better than kids who don't watch at all in academic. It's just about how you use it and how much you consume of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question in the chat. Erkan Taşçı asks, can we say some parts of using social media are related to behavioral disorders with technology? If it is, do we have any current literature about in DSM to describe them? Also, alexithymia is subclinical problem. Is that a common situation to experience for this generation?
So I think we'll break that down into little bits and pieces. So first of all, if I'm understanding the question properly, yes, it can be considered a behavioral disorder, and it is connected with technology. Technology is like a box, and within that box, once you open it up, you can have social media, you can have gaming disorder, you can have porn addiction, you can have shopping. So a lot of other things can come out of it. It all comes from the same box of technology and addiction in that sense. We do have in the DSM, we don't have social media addiction, but we do have like online gaming and gaming disorder. And there's a lot of discussion of whether, internet should be added and social media should be added, but that's another like discussion of its own. And in terms of alexithymia and a lot of other problems that people experience, there must be research on it, but most of the research that is covered generally states that there is a bombardment. So there's some bombardment of information, and after a while, it can actually lead to a lack of empathy as well, because you just feel everything feels surreal and feels too much, and it becomes okay to see all these videos. Like, even going back to the example of Gaza, like, you get to see one or two videos, you get traumatized by it, like, oh my goodness, it's horrific. You cry about it, and then you get to see so many of them, you get desensitized to it. So I think it varies by individual. We would have to look at each individual and how they interact with the media. But in terms of like empathy and alexithymia and other symptoms, yes, I think that a lot of it can be related back to our social media use. And a lot of the uncertainty right now in the world, this general increase of uncertainty, especially after COVID, has been related to higher depression rates, higher social media use, higher addictions of most kinds. So it is a complicated topic that can be looked at from various angles.
Okay, thank you for explanation. And our participants also thank you from the chat box.
Thank you.
We come to the end of today's session. I would like to thank you, Dr. Allahverdi, for your excellent speech and for joining us today. I also would like to thank you for all participants, your interest and active participation. We hope to see you in our upcoming sessions, and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, have a good evening.